been isolated for 400 years here geographically by the ocean on one side, the bay on the other, and we've developed a style about us that I think is unique.
Well, the first European colonists came over in 1609, and since that time, people have worked on the land and on the water. It's been their life and their livelihood. And I think now, for the first time in almost 4 centuries, people are beginning to feel that this very valuable traditional lifestyle is being threatened.
Development is coming to Virginia's eastern shore, from New Jersey, Long Island, and Tidewater, Virginia. What changes development will bring is a question that hovers in the minds of those who live on the eastern shore.
I don't think that people fear the development. I think they fear a big influx of people and a demand for services that the county isn't prepared to deal with.
It doesn't matter whether you're for it or against it. It's coming because this is the last place left, and a lot of people want this lifestyle, and I don't blame them. I do too.
Virginia's eastern shore lies at the southern tip of the Delmarva Peninsula. It's a narrow 70-mile stretch of land, shaped like a conch shell, bordered by the Atlantic Ocean and the Chesapeake Bay. It's an easy drive from major East Coast cities, yet the shore, as locals call it, is a land relatively undiscovered. At the shore's southern tip, a $9 one-way toll restrains encroachment from the booming Tidewater area. A network of bridges and tunnels connects 2 different worlds. Travel this way, and you move back in time.
This is like the rest of the country was probably in the late 1800s. And it's not changed that much, really. Basically, I've done the same things for a living that my great-great-great-grandfather did.
Grayson Chesser's family have been Eastern Shoremen since the Revolutionary War. This long-term perspective underscores his concerns about development of land he calls a fragile sandbar.
Yeah, one of the problems is everybody wants to live on the waterfront. But if everybody lives on the waterfront's not going to be a very nice place to live. And it's also going to pollute waters that are really state waters that belong to all the people. At one time, I guess this wasn't anything special because all the rest of the country was just like it. But as the rest of the country is changing, this is, I think, becoming more valuable because it is so unique.
The quality of life on Virginia's eastern shore began with the earliest settlers. They were hunters, fishermen, farmers. These livelihoods remain. Roger Byrne has been a farmer most of his life, but he's a newcomer to the shore. He calls himself a refugee from Virginia Beach.
I lost my land to development. I lost the rented land to development, and I had no land to farm. So I had no choice. I either had to call the auctioneer, sell the equipment, or look for land that I could purchase in a farming community.
Now Byrne faces threats from development on the eastern shore. Septic tanks from waterfront homes and a marina proposed nearby could ruin his clam crop. There is also another danger.
I guess the biggest threat for me as a owner of waterfront farmland is the fact that unless a land use tax is adopted in this county, then the developers are increasing the value of this property so much that a farmer couldn't pay the taxes on what it might be worth for development purposes.
Unchecked, growth imperils life on the shore.
Well, the groundwater is really the only fresh water supply available, and because of the geology of the area, the groundwater that's available is basically the water that has precipitated here as rain or snow and percolated into the ground.
University of Virginia hydrologist Bill Nuttall is researching the relationship of the Eastern Shore marshes to the bay and upland areas.
In areas like this, intensive development usually leads to overpumpage. Septic fields will lead to contamination of that groundwater supply. And also other land use practices associated with light industry and agriculture can have an effect as well.
How the people of the Eastern Shore handle waste disposal will determine the quality of nearshore waters. Scientists estimate that 90% of Virginia's commercial shell and fin fish depend upon the nearshore waters and wetlands at some stage in their lives. Seafood industries have been a staple of the shore. This oyster business belongs to waterman Buddy Bell. He inherited it from his father. Over the years, Bell has seen changes.
Well, we have more watermen to start with. They're taking stuff faster than it's being produced, and also we have more pollution problems.
On this 18-degree February morning, his barge is frozen in. Bell checks his equipment. Protective of his livelihood, he is likewise protective of the shore. But he feels the right type of development might help the local economy.
I think we need some development, but I think we need a controlled development. I think it should be controlled on how much and where and what. But we do need some development so some of the younger people can stay here and make a living.
Eastern Shore physician Dr. Art Carter agrees.
As far as economic development is concerned, I'd like to see for all the people of the Eastern Shore, African Americans and European Americans, I'd like to see better paying jobs. I'd like to see increased job security. I'd like to see a diversity of economic functions to broaden our tax base in the county.
I think our first priority at this point would be to have adopted a new revised comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance.
As president of Citizens for a Better Eastern Shore, Suzanne Westcott advocates balanced growth.
The group was formed because there was a trepidation that we would not be able to deal with a rapid influx of people unless we got our documents, our zoning ordinance and our comprehensive plan in a position to control the rate of that growth and direct where the growth went.
In 1988, the Virginia General Assembly passed a landmark decision known as the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act. This measure may well provide local governments with enhanced opportunity to protect important elements on Virginia's Eastern Shore.
As you may know, the new law requires that certain preservation areas be designated and that certain restrictions and management techniques be applied in those areas. It remains to be seen what those preservation areas will actually be in terms of the requirements under the law, but it's clear that the state of Virginia has expressed a strong interest in protecting certain areas.
University of Virginia urban planner Tim Beatley recommends comprehensive planning as a sound economic step. He says if you don't plan for growth now, you pay for it later.
The politically expeditious thing to do often is to allow development to take place and to go for the quick economic fix, if you will. The courageous thing and the productive thing in the long term, I would argue, is to step back and look carefully at what you have in the community and work to protect that. And let me say that that economic development and environmental protection are not inconsistent. They are not mutually exclusive.
Our first problem really was deciding on what to do, looking at the alternatives, and then being able to convince the farmer and the other people in the rural areas that this was the best way to go, and that they could not, they had to compromise along with everyone else to make the plan work, and that they couldn't grow high-rises and farm.
To avoid problems created by urban sprawl from nearby Washington, D.C., Fauquier County, Virginia, adopted a plan to balance development and farming interests. Director of Planning Dick McNear found that compromise was the key.
We require, basically, if the site so dictates, a maximum of 85% of the farm to be left in one deed-restricted parcel, clustering the allowed development on the remaining 15% of the land. The economic feasibility of is really that it works. The farmer gets some development rights, and he gets to do it, while at the same time he gets to keep that deed-restricted land and farm it. So he kind of gets a little bit of both of those worlds, not all of either.
Selling the family farm is not always a matter of choice. As taxes rise and incomes fall, some property owners are choosing an economically feasible plan which also protects the shore's future. Writer Curtis Badger is one.
We really had not made a decision to sell until I had talked with the Nature Conservancy. They explained their conservation easement program to me, where you can sell a piece of land, such as a waterfront farm such as this, with easements in place that will limit the development. Our nightmare was to sell it to someone and 5 years later find that a campground or some sort of development had taken place down there that just would not be in keeping with the neighborhood and would not be proper in that kind of a salt marsh setting. So we talked with the Nature Conservancy and discussed the conservation easement program. They very fortunately found two buyers who were willing to buy it on those terms, and so we felt very comfortable about it.
The future of Virginia's Eastern Shore rests in the hands of those who presently enjoy its quality of life. Choices will be made to determine how much and what type of development will either detract from or enhance the character of the shore. Poised on the brink of change, the people of the Eastern Shore have the challenge and the opportunity to manage tomorrow.
I'd recommend that they just take their next step into the future very carefully and recognize that they have a unique ecosystem here. They have a good relationship with that ecosystem, and that to manage it carefully. Their lives depend on it.